Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. In the early decades of the 20th century, tourists were allowed to freely climb to the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Many enjoyed the historic site by sunbathing, having picnics, or even drinking tea with a desert view. Today, the practice is banned for preservation and safety reasons, but these images capture a time when access was treated casually. Matthias Rust, a 19-year-old German, shocked the world by flying a single-engine plane from Hamburg to Moscow, landing near the Kremlin during the Cold War. He flew over 500 miles, passing Soviet anti-aircraft systems without being shot down. The incident exposed serious flaws in the Soviet defense system. Rust was imprisoned for a year after his bold journey in 1987. Papier-mâché masks with glued human hair and hand-painted details were key elements in the famous 1962 Alcatraz escape. Prisoners placed these fake heads on pillows to simulate sleeping while they escaped through tunnels dug into their cell walls. The escape became one of the most famous in history, and to this day, the fugitive's fate remains a mystery. In 1969, the flow of Niagara Falls was temporarily stopped to allow engineers to assess the stability of the rocks and remove debris accumulated at the base of the American Falls. With the water diverted, thousands of coins, lost objects, and even 2 human skeletons were discovered. The operation lasted 6 months and was one of the few times the falls were dry. The first McDonald's restaurant was opened in San Bernardino, California, in the late 1940s by brothers Richard and Maurice McDonald. The diner sold hamburgers for 15 cents and became known for its fast preparation system. In 1954, Ray Kroc joined the business, launching the expansion that would transform the brand into a global chain. This experimental firefighting suit was designed to create a water barrier around the firefighter, keeping the wearer soaked and protected from extreme heat. Developed in the early 20th century, the suit allowed jets of water to spray directly from the helmet and the clothing. The idea was to reduce the risk of burns during direct engagement with urban fires. In July 1944, around 57,000 captured German soldiers were forced to march through the streets of Moscow in what was called the Parade of the Defeated. The event followed Operation Bagration, a Soviet offensive that destroyed 28 Wehrmacht divisions and caused over 300,000 German casualties. The march had symbolic value, serving as a public display of Soviet victory and the enemy's humiliation. Fred Trump, a prominent post-war real estate developer, appears alongside his son Donald in New York in 1970. Here, they are seen observing housing developments built in Brooklyn, where Fred made his fortune through affordable housing. Donald, then young and ambitious, would soon take a more active role in the business, marking the start of his path in the industry. Olga Chekova, a celebrated actress and frequent presence in the social circles of the Third Reich, was secretly a Soviet intelligence agent. A favorite of Hitler, she gained his trust and was even at the center of an elaborate plot to assassinate him, considered one of the most viable plans of the time. However, Stalin called off the mission at the last minute for reasons never fully explained. In 1985, Xi Jinping, then a young Chinese government official, visited San Francisco as part of an official delegation to study agricultural and management practices in the United States. During the trip, he saw iconic landmarks like the Golden Gate Bridge and attended meetings with local authorities and residents. The visit was one of Xi's first encounters with the West. In the 1920s and 1930s, permanent wave machines like this one were common in beauty salons. They used electric heat or steam to shape hair, with tubes attached to clients' heads by long cables and metal supports. Despite their intimidating appearance, these devices were modern for their time and promised long-lasting curls, something highly sought after by modern women. Stefan Bibrowski, known as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man, became famous due to a rare condition called hypertrichosis, which caused long hair to grow all over his body, including his face, reaching up to 3 inches in length. He performed for years in circuses like Barnum and Bailey and amazed audiences with his ability to speak 5 languages fluently. During Prohibition, smugglers used trucks disguised as legitimate cargo to transport alcoholic beverages illegally. One of the most ingenious techniques involved hiding bottles inside stacked wooden structures with secret compartments accessed by trapdoors. The camouflage helped deceive inspectors and kept the underground trade active. During World War II, these billboards were installed in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, a secret city built as part of the Manhattan Project, which produced the atomic bomb. The signs warned workers about the absolute secrecy required, with slogans like, "Loose talk helps the enemy, so let's keep our mouths shut," reinforcing the importance of not sharing information. In the 1950s, the orgone accumulator was promoted as a device capable of attracting a supposed vital energy called orgone. Created by psychoanalyst Wilhelm Reich, the equipment consisted of a metallic cabin where a person would sit to absorb this invisible energy, which he believed had healing properties. The theory was never proven and was eventually discredited. At age 16, Norma Jean Baker, still with her naturally brown hair, poses at her first wedding with James Dougherty in 1942. Before becoming Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's iconic blonde, she lived a simple and anonymous life. The marriage was arranged to keep her from being sent to an orphanage, as her guardian could no longer care for her. Marilyn Monroe films the famous skirt-blowing scene over the subway grate in The 7-Year Itch. Shot in New York City, the scene became one of cinema's most iconic moments. The lights, media frenzy, and crowd reactions helped immortalize the image of the actress in the white dress, which became a pop culture symbol since the film's release in 1955. A rare, low-angle view captures the moment the Tank Man stands alone before a line of tanks on Chang'an Avenue in Beijing. The image was taken on June 5, 1989, one day after the Tiananmen Square massacre, and became one of the most powerful symbols of peaceful resistance against military repression. The amphibious vehicle manufactured in West Germany was the pride of Lyndon B. Johnson, President of the United States in the 1960s. He used it on his Texas ranch to prank visitors. He would drive at high speed toward a lake, pretending the brakes had failed, then splash into the water with the floating car. He would then laugh at his guests' panic. During the Vietnam War in 1969, the United States government held a public lottery to randomly select young men for military service. Each capsule represented a birth date, and its order determined draft priority. The event, broadcast from Washington, D.C., sparked national reaction and protests across the country. In this photo, we see the temporary burial site of Theodore Roosevelt, Jr. in Normandy in July 1944. He was a general in the United States Army and the son of former President Theodore Roosevelt. He was the only general to land with the troops on D-Day, leading the 4th Infantry Division. He died shortly after, of a heart attack at the age of 56. During Al Capone's trial in October 1931, the infamous mobster appeared with his lawyers, maintaining a firm demeanor in the face of tax evasion charges. Meanwhile, in the gallery, several spectators, including suspected mobsters, covered their faces with hats to avoid identification. The case marked the downfall of one of the most notorious criminals of the Prohibition era. Jack, a South African baboon, became famous for working as an assistant to an amputee railway signalman in the 1880s in Uitenhage, South Africa. He operated signal levers and helped with station tasks with remarkable accuracy. During about 9 years of service, Jack never made a mistake. His performance was so reliable that he received an official salary and even an employee number. Crowds celebrate in packed Chicago bars on December 5, 1933, the day Prohibition was officially repealed in the United States. After 13 years of banning the production and sale of alcoholic beverages, the law's end marked a return to legal consumption. The celebration symbolized national relief and the closure of an era marked by organized crime and smuggling. The French army sent large quantities of wine to its troops as part of their basic supplies during World War I. These barrels were destined for the front in Gallipoli, where wine consumption was common among soldiers to ease stress and maintain morale. The beverage was viewed as a cultural staple and almost essential for French combatants. George Hackenschmidt was one of the earliest major figures in bodybuilding and professional wrestling in the early 20th century. Known as the Russian Lion, he is widely credited with creating the bench press, which evolved from his free weight training methods. Besides being an athlete, Hackenschmidt also wrote about health and physical strength, influencing generations in the sport. A priest performs the blessing of a plane on the Western Front, a common gesture during World War I to seek divine protection for air crews and soldiers. Military chaplains offered masses, confessions, and prayers before dangerous missions, providing spiritual comfort during one of history's bloodiest conflicts. A crack in the ground reveals the direct impact of the San Andreas Fault during the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. The disaster caused one of the largest land displacements ever recorded in the United States, splitting streets and structures. With over 3,000 deaths and much of the city destroyed, the event remains one of the deadliest tragedies in American history. A crowd of 20,000 fills Madison Square Garden in New York during a Nazi rally organized by the German-American Bund. The ceremony included American flags alongside swastikas and fascist-style portraits of George Washington, with fiery speeches praising Hitler. The event took place on February 20, 1939, just months before the start of World War II. In the 1920s and 1930s, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer recorded its iconic opening roar using real lions in studios. Several lions were used over the years, filmed with professional sound and image equipment. The most famous was Leo, who appeared in 1957. The roar became one of the most iconic trademarks in the history of world cinema. Mary Ann Bevan became known after winning a Ugliest Woman contest held in the early 20th century. A nurse and mother of 4, she developed acromegaly, a condition that causes excessive bone growth. To support her family after her husband's death, she performed in circuses and exhibitions. Her story is remembered as an example of strength in the face of prejudice. During the 1980s, amid the Cold War, a gas station in Ontario, Canada, refused to fuel Soviet-made Lada cars as a protest against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. A sign declared, "We will not fuel Ladas until the Soviets withdraw." The action reflected the political climate of the time and Western solidarity with the Afghan resistance. Shortly after the end of World War II in Europe, Soviet soldiers walked the streets of Berlin, reading aloud the official declaration of Germany's surrender. The announcement marked the fall of the Third Reich and the end of years of conflict. German residents listened attentively, many stepping out to doors and windows to witness the historic moment of Nazi defeat. During the famous 1959 kitchen debate, then U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon confronts Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev at an exhibition in Moscow. Nixon argued that any American citizen could afford a washing machine, using it as a symbol of capitalist lifestyle superiority. This is Henry Ford on the quadricycle, the first car he designed and built in 1896. Gasoline-powered and with only 2 gears, the vehicle had 4 bicycle wheels and a simple engine mounted on a lightweight frame. The success of this prototype led to the founding of the Ford Motor Company and the revolution in mass automobile production in the United States. Carving Mount Rushmore was a grueling task involving more than 400 workers between 1927 and 1941. Every detail of the president's faces, including the eyes, was manually sculpted using tools like pneumatic hammers and dynamite. The eyes are about 10 feet wide and include a block of granite carved in the center to simulate a gleam. The famous Hollywood sign, originally erected in 1923, read Hollywoodland and served as an advertisement for a real estate development in the Los Angeles Hills. Over time, the sign became a symbol of the film industry. In 1949, the last 4 letters were removed during renovations, giving rise to the version we know today as a global icon of pop culture and cinema. The Willamette meteorite is the largest ever found in the United States and the 6th largest in the world. Weighing about 15 tons, it was discovered in Oregon in the early 20th century, though it is believed to have fallen thousands of years ago. Composed mainly of iron and nickel, the meteorite is considered sacred by local indigenous peoples. It is now displayed at the American Museum of Natural History. In 1974, Mick Jagger, lead singer of the Rolling Stones, was photographed alongside Leni Riefenstahl, known for her work as a propaganda filmmaker for the Nazi regime in the 1930s. The images caused controversy due to Riefenstahl's political past. The meeting occurred decades after the war, when she was still active as a photographer. Mussolini signs the Lateran Pacts in 1929, formalizing an agreement between the Italian state and the Catholic Church. The pacts recognized the Vatican as a sovereign territory under the Pope's authority and established Catholicism as Italy's official religion. In return, the Church acknowledged the fascist regime. The agreement strengthened Mussolini's position by securing political and religious support for his government. Freddie Mercury poses in his garden in 1991, in the last known photos before his death. Wearing a floral shirt and light jeans, the Queen frontman appears noticeably thinner but serene. The images were taken at his London residence, where he spent his final days surrounded by close friends and away from the media, preserving his privacy. Henry Cabot Lodge revealed to the United Nations a shield with the Great Seal of the United States that concealed a Soviet microphone. The gift had been delivered in 1945 and hung for 7 years in the ambassador's residence in Moscow. After the 1952 discovery, the United States reinforced embassy security measures and used the case to denounce Soviet espionage during the Cold War. With visible scoring marks, this loaf of bread was baked on the morning of August 24, AD 79, the same day Mount Vesuvius erupted and buried the city of Pompeii. Preserved in the oven where it was left, the charred bread is a silent reminder of everyday life abruptly cut short by one of the most famous volcanic eruptions in history. Ron Galella, a famous American paparazzo, began wearing a football helmet while following Marlon Brando in the streets. He adopted this protection after being punched by the actor in 1973, an assault that broke his jaw and knocked out 5 teeth. The attack was allegedly triggered by Galella's discovery of a possible affair between Brando and Jackie Kennedy. Joe Medicine Crow, the last war chief of the Crow Nation, is seen with Barack Obama after receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. He served in World War II, where he disarmed German soldiers, took prisoners, and stole their horses, feats that fulfilled the traditional acts of bravery of his people. He died in 2016 at the age of 102. During the Great Depression, parts of Central Park in New York were occupied by makeshift shacks built by the unemployed and homeless. These areas became known as Hoovervilles, a criticism of President Herbert Hoover. Thousands of people across the country lived in such precarious conditions between the 1930s and 1940s as a result of the economic crisis. The Beatles crossed the crosswalk in front of Abbey Road Studios in London during the photo session that would produce one of the most iconic album covers of all time. The image, taken in just a few minutes with only 6 shots, shows John, Ringo, Paul, and George in sequence, and would become a symbol of an era. Deeply leaning over the recorder, Lyndon B. Johnson listens intently to a tape sent from Vietnam by his son-in-law, Captain Chuck Robb. Amid the tension of the war, the 1968 moment captures a visibly affected president, reflecting the personal and political weight of the conflict that divided the United States. In a surprising and light-hearted moment, Russian President Boris Yeltsin takes the stage and dances to rock music during a concert in Rostov in 1996. Wearing a white shirt and tie, he dances energetically alongside dancers and musicians, drawing applause and smiles from the audience, a scene that contrasted with the political tension in Russia at the time. Edward Llewellyn displays a 425-pound black sea bass caught off Catalina Island, California, on August 26, 1903, setting the world record for the largest black sea bass ever caught with rod and line. At the time, sport fishing was growing in popularity on the west coast of the United States. The species, known to dwell in underwater caves, is strong, difficult to catch, and can live over 100 years. At just 8 years old, Samuel Reshevsky amazed the world by simultaneously playing multiple chess masters in public exhibitions, like this one recorded in France. Born in Poland, the prodigy was already known for his exceptional memory and strategic skill. Reshevsky would later become one of the greatest chess players in the United States, competing for world titles over decades. Police officers attempt to restrain Mike Tyson in the ring moments after he bit Evander Holyfield's ear during their legendary rematch in Las Vegas. The scene erupted into chaos, with team members and security involved. Tyson was immediately disqualified, and the event went down as one of boxing's most controversial moments in 1997. Soviet serial killer Andrei Chikatilo smiles coldly while appearing in court inside a metal cage, built to protect him from the wrath of victims' families. Responsible for over 50 brutal murders between 1978 and 1990, he terrorized the Soviet Union for years. His 1992 trial was one of the most shocking in the country's criminal history. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911 was one of the deadliest in New York City's history, killing 146 workers, most of them young immigrant women. Many died trapped in locked rooms or leaping from windows. The tragedy caused national outrage and led to major reforms in labor laws and workplace safety in the United States. Timothy Treadwell, nicknamed Grizzly Man, believed he could peacefully coexist with wild bears. He spent 13 summers camping in Katmai National Park, Alaska, documenting his interaction with the animals. Known for his eccentric behavior and idealism, Timothy was killed by a bear in 2003, along with his companion Amy Huguenard. His story was turned into a documentary. In 1979, a Brazilian girl refuses to shake hands with President João Figueiredo during a public event. The gesture drew attention as it occurred at the end of the military dictatorship that ruled Brazil from 1964 to 1985. Figueiredo was the last general in power during a period marked by censorship, political repression, torture, illegal arrests, and restrictions on civil liberties. To film the sinking scenes in the movie Titanic, part of the set, was built upside down. The technique allowed better camera positioning and lighting control, creating the visual effect of passengers being pulled down by the tilting ship. The use of rotating sets and practical effects was essential to bring realism to the production's most dramatic sequence. Ahmed Ali Chelaktin is widely recognized as one of the first black pilots in aviation history, and possibly the first. Born in the Ottoman Empire, he began his flight training before World War I and officially flew during the conflict. His journey stands out for breaking racial barriers at a time when aviation was still in its infancy. A nurse holds a newspaper with the headline, "Vaccine Victory," while a polio patient lies inside an iron lung. The scene marked a moment of hope for thousands affected by the disease, which caused paralysis and respiratory failure. In 1955, the announcement of the polio vaccine represented a historic advancement in medicine. In 1980, Terry Fox ran across Canada with an amputated leg to raise funds for cancer research. He lost his right leg to the disease and began the Marathon of Hope, running about 26 miles per day. His journey inspired millions and raised over 24 million Canadian dollars, a value equivalent to the country's population at the time. The Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine, was a carnivorous marsupial native to Australia and Tasmania. This is the last known photo of the animal alive, taken before the death of the final captive specimen in 1936 at the Hobart Zoo. Hunted and threatened by habitat loss, it was declared extinct. Today, scientists are studying ways to bring it back through genetic engineering. Mao Zedong appears visibly frail in his last recorded public appearance on May 27, 1976. Seated in an armchair, surrounded by aides and books, the Chinese leader was already suffering from serious health problems. He would die a few months later, at the age of 82, ending a long and controversial rule that deeply shaped 20th century Chinese history. Ronald Reagan, age 16, is seen in 1927 during his job as a lifeguard in Dixon, Illinois. He served in this role for 7 consecutive summers starting in 1925, recording an impressive 77 rescues. Before becoming an actor and later President of the United States, Reagan had already demonstrated responsibility and dedication in local public service. Queen Genapil, the last queen of Mongolia, appears dressed in the traditional Mongolian royal attire, adorned with elaborate jewelry and an impressive ceremonial headdress. She held the title as consort of the last king, Bogd Khan, until the monarchy was abolished by the Communist Revolution. Her image was captured in 1920, shortly before the dynasty's fall and the country's radical transformation under Soviet influence. Arnold Schwarzenegger and George W. Bush share a playful moment as they sled down a snowy hill, laughing like old friends on a winter day. The photo was taken in 1991 and captures a lighthearted and unlikely side of 2 public figures who would later become governors of major American states. Josef Tiso, former president of the Slovak Republic during World War II, is seen on trial in 1947, claiming he could not remember what happened under his leadership. He had collaborated with the Nazi regime and allowed the deportation of thousands of Jews. He was found guilty of war crimes and treason and was subsequently hanged. Florence Thompson, the woman featured in the famous 1936 photo Migrant Mother, appeared years later holding the portrait that made her a symbol of the Great Depression. The image captured her struggle as the mother of 7 children during a time of extreme poverty. Her identity remained unknown for decades and was only revealed to the public on October 10, 1978, during an interview. Bernie Sanders was arrested in Chicago while protesting racial segregation in public schools. During the demonstration, he was charged with resisting arrest and fined $25. The incident took place in 1963 when Sanders was 21 and already deeply involved in the civil rights movement, a cause he would continue to champion throughout his political career. In 1960, actress Anita Ekberg surprised photographers by stepping out of her house with a bow and arrow after being pursued by paparazzi all night in Rome, Italy. Tired of the invasion of privacy, she confronted the reporters armed, in an episode remembered as one of the most unusual celebrity press clashes of the time. Nazi commander Amon Goeth, seen on this balcony holding a rifle, became a symbol of brutality after being portrayed in the film Schindler's List. From that very veranda, he would shoot prisoners at the Płaszów concentration camp in Poland in 1943. His cruel actions made him one of the most infamous faces of the Nazi regime. In an iconic gesture, Soviet President Leonid Brezhnev and East German leader Erich Honecker embrace and kiss on the lips, a traditional display of socialist brotherhood. The scene took place after Brezhnev was awarded the title of Hero of the German Democratic Republic and received the Karl Marx Medal, symbolizing the union between the two communist regimes. Charles Bronson, often called Britain's most dangerous prisoner, is seen here escorted by several prison officers wearing his typical high-visibility security jumpsuit. Known for riots, assaults, and hostage-takings in prison, Bronson has spent most of his life in solitary confinement since 1974, when he was first jailed for armed robbery. Girls dressed in clothes made from flour sacks were a common sight during the Great Depression of the 1930s. The fabric from the sacks, often printed with patterns, was reused by struggling families to make children's dresses. The images reflect the reality of a time marked by scarcity, when creativity was essential for survival. Selma Burke was an African-American sculptor who created a bas-relief portrait of President Franklin Roosevelt in 1944. The piece, commissioned by the U.S. government, served as the basis for the image of Roosevelt used on the American dime, still in circulation today. Despite her historic contribution, her role was long overlooked in official records. Here we see the Pioneer, also known as Daddy Long Legs, an experimental electric vehicle that operated like a tram on tracks in the sea in Brighton, England. It was inaugurated in 1896 to transport passengers along the coast, but its operation was halted in 1901 due to storm damage. The structure walked on iron legs fixed to submerged rails. Wilbur Wright made a historic flight around the Statue of Liberty as a demonstration of aviation progress in the United States. The event attracted significant public attention and highlighted the pioneering work of the Wright brothers. Aboard one of the first motorized airplanes, he flew over New York Harbor in 1909, uniting technological innovation with one of the nation's most iconic landmarks. A clandestine photo taken in Argentina shows Walter Kuchmann, a former SS officer, living under a false identity decades after the war. Exposed by journalist Alfredo Serra, he had ordered mass executions of Jews and Polish intellectuals in Galicia. Kuchmann was arrested but died in 1986 before extradition to West Germany could be completed. Emma Lillian Todd was the first woman to design an airplane in the early 20th century. Self-taught, she built miniature models before developing a full-sized aircraft with financial support from Olivia Sage, the widow of a businessman. Her plane was tested in 1910 during